The de Havilland DH-98 Mosquito was a British twin-engine multi-role combat aircraft that saw action mainly during the Second World War. The Mosquito became one of the most famous aircraft of the war, deserving nicknames like Wooden Wonder or the affectionate Mossie. Yet, it had a humble beginning and was very close to never being produced. The de Havilland Company, known for its wooden designs, attempted to respond to an Air Ministry request for a bomber in 1936 by converting their wooden airliner, the DH-91 Albatross. The Albatross had an innovative ply-balsa-ply sandwich structure that gave it a low weight and simplified construction. But, at the time, a bomber was thought to require a substantial amount of defensive weaponry. This entailed machine gun turrets, crews to operate them, and ammunition to fire. All of this added significantly to the weight of an airplane. Because of the high number of such requirements, the Albatross was inadequate. This led to the creation of a new design, a bomber with 2 crewmen, 1 pilot and 1 navigator, no defensive armament, and a pair of Rolls-Royce Merlin engines that would make it so fast that it could evade all enemy air defenses. In October 1938, the idea was met with little interest by the Air Ministry and was rejected. The de Havilland Company vehemently stood by their design through all of 1939, when they lobbied for the concept of an unarmed bomber, until they finally achieved success on the first day of 1940, when a single prototype of the bomber variant was ordered. On March 1, 1940, a contract for 50 DH-98 Mosquitoes was placed. On November 25, 1940, the bomber prototype flew for the first time. Soon it became clear that the Mosquito was incredibly fast. This was demonstrated when it outpaced a Spitfire Mark II in a test on January 16, 1941. In early February, the prototype reached 390 miles per hour at 22,000 feet. On May 15, the night fighter prototype became the second Mosquito to fly, followed by the photo reconnaissance version on June 10. On July 18, the original prototype fitted with new Merlin 61 engines reached a staggering 430 miles per hour, outpacing the Hawker Typhoon and becoming the fastest British operational aircraft, a distinction it held for more than 2 years. But speed wasn't its only excellent characteristic. The Mosquito had very good range, maneuverability, climb rate and ceiling. Also, its wooden construction gave it several qualities: low weight, ruggedness, faster production and smaller impact on strategic materials, easier maintenance and a requirement for a less specialized workforce, slightly reduced radar detectability. In July, the No. 1 Photographic Reconnaissance Unit became the first to receive the Mosquito. The Mosquito's operational history is quite complex, so we'll look at it one role at a time. We start now with the function where the Mosquito was one of the best in the conflict, as a night fighter. The fighter version, the NF-2, differed from the bomber version in that it had 4 20mm Hispano cannons in addition to the 4 303 Browning machine guns. It also had 2 Rolls-Royce Merlin 21, 22 or 23 engines, capable of producing 1460 horsepower each, while the early bomber variant only used the 21 version. It also had a flat bulletproof windscreen, an AI Air Intercept Mark IV radar, and strengthened wing spars. By March 1942, only 14 of these had been delivered. Even so, just in time for what became known as the Baedeker raids, taking their name from the Baedeker Guides, a series of German tourist guidebooks. These bombing raids began in late April 1942 and were mainly directed against historical British cities like Bath, Exeter, Canterbury, Norwich and York, among others. The first sortie by a night fighter Mosquito was on April 27, 1942, to intercept German bombers that raided Norwich. But the 3 Mosquitoes from No. 157 Squadron failed to down any enemy bombers. More success came during the months of May, June and July, with Mosquito crews downing several German bombers. At this time, Mosquito fighters were mainly used to bolster British night defenses, but not exclusively. In 1943, the Bay of Biscay was becoming ever more contested, with Germany positioning several long-range fighters to deal with British anti-submarine raids. In response, Mosquitoes were sent on patrols over the area, in what became known as in-step operations, to try and deal with German interceptors, achieving mixed results. A new night fighter variant, the NF-12, started equipping units in April 1943. This version was a conversion of the Mark II with the new AI Mark VIII radar and only 4 20mm cannons. This proved to be even more effective against German night bombers, and more, the brunt of British night defenses was assumed by Mosquitoes. Around this period, Germany changed tactics once again, and the FW-190 fighter bombers that had been harassing southern England switched to night operations. This proved to be a mistake, and the first FW-190 was shot down by a Mosquito on the night of May 14th. Several others followed, and the Mosquito proved to be quite successful against these quick raids. With increasing success, more and more units assigned to night defenses traded their Beaufighters for Mosquitoes, with the last unit to make that transition doing so in the fall of 1943. The months of October and November saw an increase in German activity over Britain, but this time British night defenses were better prepared and took a heavy toll on German bombers, shooting down 28 in 3 weeks. Still, some of the new fast aircraft like the FW-190, the Me-410 or the Ju-88S variant were difficult to intercept, even for the Mosquito. The new NF-13, with modified Merlin engines that used nitrous oxide for better performance at altitude, allowed the British fighter to catch some of those fast opponents. On January 21, 1944, the Germans once again changed their approach and started what was called Operation Steinbock, a series of revenge raids. On the first night, Germany lost 21 aircraft, 12 of which were claimed by Mosquitoes. The following month, Mosquitoes claimed 32 aircraft shot down. Due to catastrophic losses among bombers, Steinbock raids were called off towards the end of May 1944. Without further large-scale German raids, 4 night fighter Mosquito squadrons were transferred to the 2nd Tactical Air Force to support the Normandy landings. These joined 2 fighter-bomber squadrons as part of the No. 85 base group, tasked with the defense of the beachhead. 10 squadrons remained in the air defense of Great Britain. In June, 75 aircraft were claimed by Mosquitoes. The number fell to 55 in July and rose to 77 the next month. By this time, the NF-30, the last night fighter variant to see significant action during the Second World War, had arrived. This was a development of the NF-19 and was powered by a pair of Merlin 72, 76 or 113 engines and had an AI Mark X radar. This variant came just in time for the latest German threat, the V-1 flying bombs. Reaching 400 miles per hour, these rudimentary cruise missiles were extremely hard to intercept, but Mosquitoes proved to be highly successful against them, downing a large number. The only aircraft to achieve more total victories over V-1s was the Hawker Tempest. In total, 25 Mosquito pilots became V-1 aces. Eventually, V-1 launching sites were overrun in northern France, but this wasn't the end of that threat, as Germany had developed a modified version of the Heinkel 111 to air-launch the flying bombs. Only the Mosquito and the Tempest were able to deal effectively with this new threat, and about 20 of these new Heinkel 111s were shot down by Mosquitoes. With the German night defenses slowly failing, Mosquito missions became more and more offensive, extending well into Germany. This brings us to another role in which the Mosquito excelled, the role of intruder, a military aircraft that operates deep into enemy airspace. In 1942, Mosquitoes started being used in this role, albeit initially in a very limited capacity. Only by mid-1943 was the intruder role taken more seriously, with Mosquitoes performing flower patrols, disruptive attacks on German night fighter airfields in support of night bombing raids. Less conventional missions included Rangers, which were low-level attacks made on moonlight nights against enemy infrastructure or any aircraft encountered, Rhubarb missions, which involved a pair of aircraft looking for ground target opportunities at low level, and Mammoth operations, which involved Mosquitoes being used as bait for enemy night fighters. On November 11, 1943, the No. 100 group was created. A special duty group within Bomber Command focused on electronic warfare and countering enemy night fighters. Within this group, Mosquito squadrons harassed enemy fighters, helped by the introduction of new equipment, such as the Serrate radar detection and homing device, that allowed British pilots to detect emissions from the radar used by German night fighters. Initially, considerable results were achieved, but the Germans quickly adapted. In the first months of 1944, Allied bombers were suffering increasing losses, and Mosquitoes from No. 100 group weren't yet able to disrupt German night defenses. As such, 2 night fighter squadrons were transferred for bomber support. The effect was felt immediately. By late 1944, intruder missions by mosquitoes had become so common and widespread that German night fighter pilots became afflicted by what was called mosquito Schreck, mosquito terror. A large number of German fighters had been shot down by mosquitoes stalking their airfields and waiting for the right moment to attack. The fear of this threat led to paranoia, causing Germans to make rushed landings, leading to a large number of accidents. When the spring of 1945 came, mosquitoes completely owned the night skies over Germany. But unconventional raids weren't exclusive to intruder squadrons. Fighter bombers had their share. The FB-6 was a fighter bomber, intruder and long-range fighter version with two 1400 horsepower Merlin 21-23 or two 1635 horsepower Merlin 25 engines. It had the same armament as the fighter version, but could carry two 500-pound bombs in the bomb bay and two 500-pound bombs under the wings, or two 50-gallon drop tanks. The range was about 1,000 miles, carrying full ammo and 2,000 pounds of bombs. 2,289 of these were produced, about one-third of all mosquitoes ever built. Fighter bomber mosquitoes saw considerable action as part of the 2nd Tactical Air Force, striking targets of opportunity behind German lines during and after the Normandy landings. In addition, several bombing missions were conducted against V-1 sites in northern France. But it was the precision strikes that made mosquito fighter bombers famous. Here are a few examples. On January 30, 1943, mosquitoes were used to bomb Berlin in order to disrupt speeches by Hermann Göring and Joseph Goebbels, given over the radio to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Hitler's rise to power. Göring's speech was disrupted for more than an hour. On February 18, 1944, mosquitoes bombed Amiens prison in France, blowing holes in the prison walls in order to release French resistance fighters. 258 prisoners were able to escape, but many were later recaptured. On March 21, 1945, mosquitoes bombed the Shellhus building, the Gestapo headquarters in Copenhagen, resulting in the deaths of dozens of Gestapo members. In addition to the precision strikes, the Mosquito was also a good level bomber. The first operation by mosquito bombers of the B Mark IV variant was on May 31, 1942, the day after the first 1,000-bomber raid on Cologne. 4 mosquitoes were sent to bomb and photograph the city. Several similar daylight raids were conducted between July and September 1942, with mosquitoes suffering heavy casualties. Many were shot down by Focke-Wulf FW-190s, as the German fighter was slightly faster at mid to high altitudes. But at low altitudes, the British aircraft had an edge in speed. This led to a change in tactics. Mosquito bombers started being used on low-level bombing missions about half an hour before dark, when there was just light enough to see the target. Then the return trip would be made under the cover of darkness. Losses due to fighter interception decreased considerably. Still, mosquito bomber losses were high, especially due to German flak. And the last low-level daylight raid by a mosquito bomber was on May 27, 1943, when factories in Jena were hit. This resulted in 5 out of 14 mosquitoes failing to return. After this, mosquito bombers either changed to night bombing or were sent into the Pathfinder group. The number 8 group, also known as the Pathfinder Force, was tasked with finding and marking targets ahead of the main force of heavy bombers, allowing for much increased accuracy. In this type of action, the Mosquito proved highly effective. Another unconventional role associated with the number 8 group was spoof raiding, in which mosquito bombers carried window, bundles of more than 1,000 aluminum foils detectable by German radars, giving the appearance of an incoming large bomber raid. In 1944, the B Mark IV was modified with a strengthened bomb bay to be able to carry the 4,000-pound cookie bomb. With this possibility, mosquitoes were used as a light night striking force, and in February 1944, Dusseldorf was hit by a raid composed only of cookie-carrying mosquito bombers. Due to its excellent ceiling and speed, the mosquito bomber was almost unreachable to German night fighters, and very few losses were sustained during these raids. Mosquitoes of number 8 group flew 28,215 sorties, dropped 35,000 tons of bombs, and suffered the lowest losses in bomber command, a total of 108, 1 per 2,800 sorties. When it came to attacking non-flying targets, the Mosquito also achieved success in yet another role, that of a naval bomber. The FB Mark 18 Tetsi was a variant equipped with a 57mm Mollins cannon in the nose, a modified Kiev 6-pounder anti-tank gun, replacing the 20mm cannons. It retained 2 or 4 303 machine guns. The first operation of a Tetsi Mosquito was on October 24, 1943, but Mosquito pilots would have to wait until 1944 for the first confirmed submarine victory, when on March 25, U-976 was sunk while returning to Saint Nazaire. From May 1944, Tetsi Mosquito started being used against surface vessels, achieving some success against smaller ships, but firepower increased considerably when, on September 28, Mosquitoes were modified to carry 8 RP rockets under their wings. After the Normandy landings, the threat posed by German U-boats gradually shifted to Norwegian and Danish waters, and during late 1944 and early 1945, most naval missions carried by Mosquitoes were off Norway's coast. During this period, the Mosquito proved to be quite a good naval bomber. An example of success was April 8, 1945, when near the Kattegat, 34 Mosquitoes came across and sunk 3 U-boats with a mix of cannon fire and rocket hits. In a more discreet fashion, 14 Mosquito reconnaissance squadrons served with distinction. The Mosquito was also used as a fast transport, carrying important objects like diplomatic bags, mail, or the odd passenger in the bomb bay. Besides the distinguished service over Germany, the Mosquito also had a presence in the Mediterranean, Italian and Pacific theaters, but to a much smaller degree. In the Pacific, one critical flaw was discovered after several crashes occurred due to structural failure, leaving the Mosquitoes grounded for a period. A problem associated with the glue and tropical heat was discovered, and one of the solutions was to paint Mosquitoes in silver, reducing temperatures inside the wing by 15 degrees Celsius. But it seems that the temperature wasn't the only culprit in the issue, as the gluing standard was found to be very poor. In total, 7,781 Mosquitoes were built, 6,710 during the war. It had 33 variants during the conflict and a further 7 after. Mosquitoes were flown by more than 100 RAF squadrons. Night fighter Mosquitoes claimed over 600 air-to-air victories. 62 pilots became aces flying the Mossie, and a further 47 aces achieved some of their victories with it. Wing Commander Brands Burbridge was the most successful Allied night fighter pilot. He had all 21 victories with the Mosquito. He attributed much of his success to his navigator, squadron leader Bill Skelton. In an interview with Andrew Thomas, RAF researcher and author of Mosquito Aces of World War II, he said, "The Mosquito was a quite superb aircraft, but could be tricky to fly, especially on one engine. In a word, successful night fighting was down to one thing: teamwork. We owed a huge amount to our ground crews, something that is often overlooked. However, any success that I achieved was due in large part to my navigator and lifelong friend, Bill Skelton. He was magnificent." This video only covers a very tiny fraction of the service the Mosquito gave. Its importance was such that there is no doubt in my mind that it was a war-winning aircraft, and incredibly, the Mossie was quite close to never being built in the first place. It was one of the first ever multi-role aircraft. It can be said that it was a jack of all trades. When hearing this term, we might assume that something that is good at doing everything isn't very good at doing anything specific. I don't believe that this is such a case, as it proved to be one of the best in the war in some of the roles it performed. There is also a terrifying aspect to the Mosquito. The aircraft that is waiting for you to turn on the landing lights seconds away from safety before shooting you down. I can only imagine the effect this had on German pilots' morale. Like many crews stated, the Mosquito was shooting down German planes just by being there. In versatility, only a few aircraft in this conflict could even compare. Those immediately coming to my mind are the German Ju-88, the American P-38 and the Soviet Tu-2. What other aircraft could contend for the title of the conflict's most versatile? Let me know in the comments below. This is probably a good topic for a future video. Thank you very much for watching and I hope to see you again soon.